Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm back out in the garage. It's about 40 degrees, so I'm gonna take advantage of that while it's winter time. In the last episode, I pulled the transmission on this. We walked through kind of what upgrades are in the transmission. So in this episode, it's now time to pull out the 5.3. After we get that out, I'll probably walk through some of the things that are in it. I mean, if you guys follow the channel, you know it's Brian Tooley Racing, parts from top to bottom, but we can talk about some of those parts and kind of how much power I'm making, and maybe what you might want to do for your car. So let's jump right in. All right, so I'm over here in front of the engine, and what I'm gonna do is just walk through a few of the things that we're gonna do at first, and then probably just go ahead and do it like a time lapse or something while we're doing that. But intake pipe needs to come off. I've got a little bracket down here, just a 10mm bolt, and then we've got two vibrant clamps. Got these awesome HD clamps on this thing now, so all you do is just pull that pin and this dude pops off. So those are super easy. We do need to disconnect our fuel line, so we'll disconnect at the rail, both front and back, leave the regulator, return, etc., all that off. We'll get our breather hoses off, both sides, start disconnecting quite a bit of the electrical, leave the harness in the engine. No reason to pull the harness out. It all kind of just lays perfectly. And then we'll take, the biggest step is probably just taking the intake manifold off. The nice thing about that is the injector harness on the Holly, it's all one piece, so there's just one connector that pulls off the main harness. That comes out. I've got quick release V-bands on the exhaust, so we'll pop those dudes off, and then a couple wires down below that we have to take out of there. And then really, I'll probably go ahead and pull the radiator just so it's out of the way. So I gotta take those hoses off anyhow, so that's not a big deal. And really that's a majority of it. So we'll just take it step by step and get started. All right, step one, we're gonna go ahead and remove our upper intercooler pipe. Pretty simple. I've got a 10mm bolt down here on this little bracket we made. Pop that dude off real fast. And once that's out, there are two vibrant HD clamps on here. If you guys haven't seen these vibrant clamps, I switched all this up last year to these clamps. There's no more silicone couplers on this thing, and we have obviously not blown off any colors. We don't have any leaks. They're fantastic. I actually popped this one off, but it's just a quick, easy pin. You just push this pin in and pull this down, and then these slide right off there. Just like that. So you guys can see it's just when you go to put them back together, you just snap together, and then when you take them off, you push that pin, boom. The nice thing about these is there's no pieces to lose or anything. This pin stays permanently attached on here, so boom. And then along with it, there's this little sleeve collar and then two O-rings, and then obviously your flanges that are welded. So let's pop the other one off the bottom here. I mean, it really doesn't get any easier than that. Pipe loose, like so. Now you can see the O-ring, and there we go. Simple as that. So the pipe's off. So now that's off. Really, I guess the next thing is probably let's go ahead and pull this radiator out, just kind of work our way backwards. So if you're not familiar, on an LS, there's 4 ports on the heads that allow any trapped air to come out. So we just have that running back into the radiator here. Okay, perfect. So we'll just set that guy up there for now. Next, let's get this upper radiator hose off. Screwdriver here, and we'll pop the other side off. There we go. Ooh. I only run water in this thing, but sheesh, looks like it could use a good cleaning. I guess I did put coolant in this one time over winter. There we go. So I just have like worm gear clamps on my radiator hoses, but I do use these, I'm not sure what they're called, but I feel like they get a little bit better bite and they don't create all these little indentations. I don't know if it matters, but it seems to work well. So we'll stick with them. All right, then it's just two small little, I don't know if they're 8s or 7s. Let's take a look. Looks like 8s maybe. Close enough. Two little bolts here that hold in the radiator mounts on each side. All right, we've got everything out for the radiator to come out now. 2 mounts, 2 hoses, coolant pressure sensor, the overflow, and the steam vent. Then you also want to unplug, just running a single fan. This is I think like a 15 or 16 inch spow fan, biggest, baddest dude we could get. So I'm gonna pull this out, try not to spill it too much, and I'm probably gonna end up flushing this thing because it's looking a little dirty, but there's definitely still some fluid in here. Let's see if we can sneak that hose over there. Perfect. All right, yeah, this thing's got a bunch of bugs in it. Want to get that cleaned up. With our radiator gone, now we've got a lot of room to work with in the front. I think our next step is going to be to go ahead and pull off the crossover tube, which consists of 2 pieces. So I've got my 2 manifolds, and then I've got a crossover that goes underneath the engine, and then a little Y piece, the merge, that goes to the turbo. So as I mentioned before, I have these quick releases, but we're going to go ahead and loosen them up a little bit. That'll make it easier going back on later. So all we need is a ratcheting 11. We'll loosen that up a little bit over here. A little bit over here. And once those are both semi-loose, then we can just use a quick release on here. And here. Now, I have in the past had these dudes fight me a little bit as far as coming off, so I might have to hit them. There we go. Perfect. Now that guy's off. Might make it easier to get the other one. And what I was talking about, the quick release, you can see like that. So the V-band, when it's tight, oops, there you go. So then you just pop that open. So it's handy for taking it apart. You still have to loosen this to typically get it back on there. The other thing I want to tell you guys is this car's been in the 7s with a 5.3 and a mid-size turbo, small turbo, and we have a 2-inch crossover. So before you go put a 3-inch crossover to make 800 horsepower on your 5.3, maybe think about it again, because I've proven it works. Probably want to redo the wrap or get these coated. This wrap has been on here for like 5 years, so it's lasted quite a while. I can't be too mad at it. But it might be time to think about getting that coated. And if you didn't believe me about the 2-inch exhaust, look at this thing. It works. Okay, so at this point, we'll go ahead and start pulling off our fuel lines and our catch can lines, breather lines, and get those out of the way before we pull the intake manifold. All right, while those are draining, we'll go ahead and pull our breather lines, which should be -10. Here's a tip for you guys. If you're running a boosted LS motor, if you can, put your breather lines at the front of the valve covers. I know it's super common for a lot of guys to run the rear, especially on that side, because of the factory valve covers are kind of set up that way. But in my experience, by putting these in the front, when you're drag racing anyways. The oil that does come and accumulate in the head and the blow by, etc., primarily throws to the back of the motor, just based on G's. And by having this in the front, you're really only getting the vapor and you're not getting as much in your catch can. We went from really having to empty that can, which is not a huge catch can, but it's enough, pretty much after every pass, to not having to touch it at all. So if you can, I highly suggest setting it up that way. So next up, as you can see, I did a few more things. I pulled the water pump off, get the rest of that out. I've unhooked a few of the electrical components, and now's the time to go ahead and pull this intake manifold off. Getting this off and out of the way just removes a lot of the stuff from the top end. It's easier to get the chain on it. I don't have to raise it as high. This intake manifold, we've got throttle cable to get out of the way. This is a custom bracket that I made years ago, because the bracket that is typically used kind of sits up above, and I don't have any hood clearance, so I made a bracket that goes below. So we'll get the throttle cable off. We've already got the fuel lines unhooked. We have to do disconnect the injector harness on the back. My turbo line, we just need to kind of snake it out of the way for now, and then we'll be able to unhook that really easily. And then the vacuum line, so my vacuum source is just a quick disconnect back here, so we can pop that off pretty easily. That gives vacuum to my MAP sensor, as well as vacuum source for the fuel pressure regulator and the blow-off valve. The BTR intake manifold, this is the equalizer one. It is held in with just a bunch of Allen bolts. So we'll get these two off, and then the bottom. The lid, which is what these two are, as well as the base, are all the same size. So we'll check that size and go ahead and get those loose and pull that sucker off. All right, simple 5mm. We'll just start to loosen them up. Well, it looks like I didn't hit record when I pulled the intake manifold off, so this might look a little bit different than before. Yeah, we've got the intake manifold off. Like I said, it's just those 10 bolts. I had to get this vacuum line off the back here. The nice thing is it's just one big connector for the injectors, so simple enough to unplug that. Probably can't see it in frame, but the injectors, the fuel rail, the harness, everything just stays, throttle body, all that just stays on the intake manifold. It does look like maybe we had a little bit of leaking going on around the seals, so I might put some fresh seals on it while we've got it apart. But to pull this motor, most of the rest that you see here is going to stay on it. We don't have to take the valve covers off. We can leave the coils on. The exhaust manifolds will stay on. I mean, of course, the end goal here is to pull the heads off of it, so those will come off eventually. But for as far as getting it out of the engine, we just need to disconnect a few more electrical connectors. We've got, really that's about it. All right, it is go time. We've got the hoist all ready to go, and I just realized this is the first time I'll be pulling this motor out with the rear sump pan and the new K-member as well. So I'll be real curious to see how much easier or not easier this is to get it out of here. So I'm gonna wheel this over, hook up the chain, and let's see what she does. All right, let's do a quick check, make sure I didn't miss anything, but it seems like it's coming out pretty easily. That. We're good on that side. This side looks pretty good. Oh, I did miss something. I'm glad I looked real quick. The oil filter lines are still connected. Ah, darn it. See, I knew there was something I missed. All right, that's why the engine was wanting to turn quite a bit. On my particular setup, when I had the fueled racing front sump pan, you have to run a remote oil filter. So when we went to the Moroso pan rear sump, I decided to go ahead and just keep the remote oil filter. One, I can run a bigger filter than you can on the LS motors. I run actually I think it's a Ford spec, but it's huge. And then also I have an oil cooler that sits up front, so it was easier just to connect those lines, those dash 10 lines, to the cooler and to the filter, etc., and back into the motor. So actually I think it goes filter, into the cooler, out of the cooler, into the engine. So the engine gets filtered and cooled oil pumping through it. So those are unhooked. I need to get some dash 10 AN caps just to put on there so it doesn't leak all over the place. So for now, I threw an extra glove on there. I'm sure it'll fall off and make a mess, but in an attempt to not make a mess, we're gonna give that a shot. So let's finish pulling this dude out of here. All right, let's start sliding this out. A little bit more to clear the pan. That's it. All right, we're sitting next to the motor. It's out of the engine bay now, and I want to just take a quick second to walk through what all is inside of this block you see here. So it's a Gen 4 aluminum block 5.3. It's got a BTR crank, BTR rods, and BTR/Wiseco 5.3 boost pistons. There are small bore head gaskets. They're 1/2-inch studs, a set of land speed ported 243 799 heads, the BTR Ultimate RPM springs, push rods, and their shaft rocker kit, as well as topping it off with these beautiful valve covers. And then, not seen, but over on the table you saw it earlier, we took off the equalizer intake. So it's a pretty basic off-the-shelf 5.3 setup. It's worked wonders. We put an 84mm Force Performance HTZ turbo on it this year, which we really didn't get to push too hard. On about 29 pounds, I think it was, we went 810, 812. There's probably another 6-7 plus horsepower. You crazy guys might throw another 10 at it, but the motor was really happy this year with the oil pressure with our new rear sump pan, our back pressure with the new turbo. Everything was just much happier this year. We're really glad to see that, especially after we figured out the spark plug issue. So we're gonna take this apart and go ahead and put those Brodix heads back on this thing to really do a nice comparison of kind of what we've had before and see what we can do. Catch that in the next episode where we put those heads on, we put this motor back together, we get the freshened transmission in, and we throw it all back into the engine bay and fire this dude up to get ready for the 2025 season. After that, we got something special for you guys. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And if you are subscribed, go ahead and hit that notification button so that way you get the notification when we put these new videos out. Typically you'll see them on Wednesdays, but I may change it up. You never know. So thanks for watching, and we will catch you guys on the next one.